Okay, so following on from our recent Bird Box podcast and the absolutely depressing runaway success of that film, there were just a few addendums, a few topics from it that we wanted to pick up on and elaborate on it more. So, what do we have, Aaron? We've got Bird Box, Susanne Bier, the director, the Dogme 95, and Machine Gun Kelly.
Two things actually go together very well, but I never thought I'd be adding Machine Gun Kelly to a list with those two things on it.
It's a crazy old world we're living in.
It's true. Much like
I don't like it. It's a dark timeline.
We say this. I like living in the dark timeline. It has its perks.
It's novel.
It's interesting.
It's definitely more novel than the mid-range or light timeline would be.
Exactly. But yeah, imagine like the mid-range timeline where it's sort of like Hillary Clinton got in, Brexit didn't happen, everything's kind of fine.
Yeah.
I know.
But also kind of shit as well.
Yeah, exactly. I like gives you something to look at.
Definitely. Even if that is a nihilistic viewpoint.
Start with the last. Let's go Machine Gun Kelly.
Okay.
Because I think that is the succinct one. Josh has something you'd like to tell everyone.
Yes. Hi, I'm Josh, and I'm an alcoholic. But also, I am an idiot, and sometimes such an idiot most people don't even notice. And this was a classic example of me slipping under the radar.
Can I just say, as someone who gets frequently mocked for being unable to tell women apart, this is particularly good for me.
I have absolutely, I've dissed you into the ground. I've ground you into the dirt on this subject, and then I've finally, pride cometh before the fall. And when we were actually reviewing this film, I thought it was funny how we gave everyone sort of a fake name that wasn't the name of their character. There
Cutler Beckett.
Yeah, Cutler Beckett. There was Moonlight.
John Malkovich,
and Machine Gun Kelly. And I thought that the only salient one there was John Malkovich because that was actually his name. Because when I was watching this movie, I thought it was funny that, the guy who looked like Machine Gun Kelly looked so much like Machine Gun Kelly. And then obviously we were all laughing about it when we were reviewing the film. So I was like, yeah, that is funny, Machine Gun Kelly. So then, I think 1 or 2 days afterwards, I was reading the news online and I saw a related article that said what Machine Gun Kelly thought after reading the Bird Box script. And I'm already laughing my ass off. I'm like, that's hilarious. This is going to be a really satirical article about how that guy looked so much like Machine Gun Kelly. No, the whole time, I was the only person who wasn't aware that actually was Machine Gun Kelly. So after discussing it at length and even explaining to our third podcaster who Machine Gun Kelly was, I was the person who was in the dark. So, Finally, I've been dragged kicking and screaming back to reality.
Yeah.
That was Machine Gun Kelly. He looks hideous.
He does.
Yeah.
He's not a pretty man.
He looked slightly better in the Rap Devil video.
Yeah,
I mean, still a prick, but...
I mean, he looks... I mean, if you have to cast, and like I said in the original video, I believe he was originally probably cast to be sort of like quite a sinister figure.
Yeah.
If you want to cast someone who look like you don't immediately trust, it's probably Machine Gun Kelly.
Well, I just thought like the producer had gone something like, okay, we want some kind of like white trash, kind of bad boy, pill-selling character. Get me someone who looks like Machine Gun Kelly.
Yeah, they're like, is Jason Mewes? He's like, no, he's old now. He doesn't look like that anymore. Oh, okay, well,
that's right.
Who's next?
Yeah, and they were like, he was like, obviously not Machine Gun Kelly. He might be expensive, but then they went out and got Machine Gun Kelly. Maybe the producer was in the same situation where he was like, my God, this guy looks like Machine Gun Kelly. Excellent. And he was like, I am Machine Gun Kelly. He was like, and he's a great actor as well.
They were like, sure you are, kid.
Whatever you say, keep doing those pills. There's plenty more where that came from.
He's like, I used to work for an actual company before I worked for Netflix. He's like, now I just have an endless pit of money.
Oh man!
As he said, the other obviously our other often quoted scenario is that he went out to like throw the trash bag in the dumpster, and then Machine Gun Kelly was in there, and he was like, "Oh, this is perfect!
It's fantastic!
I can just drag him out."
I've done barely any casting calls today. This is terrible. I better take out the trash. Hey man, what the fuck you doing?
Are you a barely recognisable face and or name? Yeah.
This is my house, man. Would you like a slightly larger house? Perhaps the dumpster across the way? Because we can pay you for that.
I can make it happen.
Yeah, the rat beef didn't go so well, so now he's in Bird Box.
My two favourite parts of that story is one, like you said, that you were actively explaining to someone who Machine Gun Kelly was, while simultaneously not knowing what he looked like, or like knowing that he looked like, but approximately.
Well, it was almost as though it would be like if Machine Gun Kelly was in the room and I was explaining to Alec, just like, so this man looks a lot like someone called Machine Gun Kelly, who is this, and this.
I mean, and also all this made more hilarious by the fact that we refer to this man as Machine Gun Kelly.
Yeah, well, I mean, we refer to him as his name.
Yeah, and then, the second part being that, because, it's a bit like a sort of a Warner Brothers cartoon where, like a Looney Tunes thing, where even at the point where you should have reasonably known that it was Machine Gun Kelly, the bit where you saw a title saying Machine Gun Kelly reacts to the script,
that's right.
You instead assumed that it was a parody, a further parody, rather than even remotely suspecting that it might actually have been Machine Gun Kelly at this point.
It didn't occur to me at all. I was just laughing even harder.
Yeah, exactly. So, I love it. It's kind of perfect.
I was actually excluded from what was going on, but I felt entirely included.
And neither of us could tell that you weren't, so, which is magnificent.
This is my tragic life, like, all the time.
Well, I mean, the good thing is, though, is, like, on the surface, it doesn't seem that tragic. It's only when viewed from a different perspective, or with some extra knowledge.
The fucking labyrinth that I'm always trying to run out of.
It's really, I love it.
This was just a pretty hedge.
It's like, you've been stuck here for 12 years. I thought I was choosing to be here.
Oh, man. So now that we've resolved that one, Aaron became quite passionate at one point during the podcast about Susanne Bier, the director of this.
Yep, at one point I said
talk
that...
some more about her.
At one point I said that she's not a stupid woman.
That's right.
And then in the current, like, British political climate, I realised that could have been a bit... You're
going to lose your job, man.
Yeah, exactly. I'm gonna be fired.
I'm going to have to set fire to you.
I'm going to say, it's going to be awful. Yeah, no, I stand by it. She's not a stupid woman. I guess I could have said she's not a stupid person.
Yes.
If that's 50 times better, then pretend I said that instead.
Unfortunately, it is now too late, and you will always
I am now,
carry the guilt of this statement.
A rallying point for the alt-right.
Yep.
I mean, if they want to send me all their Patreon money, that'd be great. But I'm not going to do anything to earn it, so that's sad.
You've done enough in their eyes.
But they'll probably dislike me because I'm about to defend Susanne Bier, who's probably about as far from the alt-right's mantra as you can get.
Absolutely.
So I've known about this director for years. She's a really good director, in my opinion. The fact that what she'll be remembered for...
This must be her largest film ever. And
by far.
Will be
it's never...
Until Bird Box 2.
I wouldn't be surprised, right, if...
Bird Boxes again.
Bird Box 2? She won't direct that.
No?
I don't think so.
Oh, well, Bird Boxes again, maybe Sylvester Stallone can get involved.
You don't need her to direct that, really. Like, I couldn't really see much of her, short of, like, the subject matter a bit. Because, like, some of her... So her films, like, frequently focus on... How would you call it? I guess, like, the instability of the middle class. Like, she focuses on, like, a lot on families and, like, how to keep families together under a time of great stress. Normally that stress is a bit more sort of, like, artsy and European. Like how to cope with ennui or how to cope with an affair. It's rarely sort of like the mass suicide of humanity.
How to cope with a fucking aborted John Carpenter plot happening outside your house.
Exactly. It's weird.
I can see the roots of that in it, though. By the way, that's interesting.
Definitely.
If that's her modus operandi.
Yeah, and motherhood as well. Like she's really interested in motherhood. I've listened to loads of interviews over the years. I know. She always imagined herself that she would just sort of like be a mother with like I think it was like 6 kids or something, and she just sort of that would be her life, and it didn't turn out like that at all. And
ended making movies.
Yeah, exactly. And so she's really interesting. She has and there are some interesting relationships with sort of like motherhood in this. They're not developed enough, because it's trying to be like 80 different other things at the same time. Why I think this is such a weird film? I was trying to think of a suitable analogy to like sort of like contextualize what it would be like me seeing, and I guess it would be a bit like if I saw. In maybe like I don't know, like the 70s, like Alfred Hitchcock has done like what's it called? What's the Kevin Bacon dance film?
Footloose. Yeah.
It's a bit like if I like walked along, it's like Alfred Hitchcock presents Footloose.
Yeah.
I'll be like, okay, I guess he's hard up on money.
After the trauma as well. I mean, much like what you've done here with Bird Box, is you'd have to start going about taking the pieces of Footloose apart and back together in a way that you could reconcile it with the filmography of Alfred Hitchcock.
Yeah, exactly.
Which would be an interesting exercise, and I know that some disturbed people are definitely listening to this. Go ahead.
Email us. I want to see everything about Footloose and Alfred Hitchcock.
Yep.
Or if you have any comments on Susanne Bier, I want more people. No, not if I can take
for our army.
Yeah, exactly. If I can take Bird Box can generate a positive thing in the world, it might be that more people check out Susanne Bier's stuff.
No, it is interesting because, I mean, from what you've told me and from what I've read since, is that she's a highly credible filmmaker who cut her teeth on the Lars von Trier Dogme 95 manifesto. So she's not just a credible filmmaker, she's also one that's came up from kind of the dirt. I mean, she's done some very hands-on filmmaking.
Well, I mean, if you look at like her first films, and I've seen snippets, 1990s, 1980s, earlier than like Danish productions. Like they've got a less budget than even James Wan was working with. She's just a better director or a different director. Maybe not even better. I don't want to sort of put it inherently. Okay. I don't want to be like a snob and be like, it's only cinema if it's fucking silent Euro trash, absolutely. Black and white stuff. I'm not that guy. I like I just spent an hour defending Aquaman, so I'm definitely not that guy. We'll start off with obviously so she did a bunch of really early Danish projects. I haven't seen all of them. There's a really interesting one about the Eurovision. His name escapes me right now. It's sort of like this woman who's obsessed with the Eurovision.
That's weird.
She names all her kids after Eurovision stars.
That's terrifying.
It's really like a...
Is it a disturbing film, or is it supposed to be lighthearted?
It is, and it's a bit sort of like Andy Warhol-esque. I wish I could... I might research it. Maybe I'll put it in the link. And anything I can't remember. And again, like I was saying to Josh afterwards, like my Susanne Bier period was sort of like maybe pushing on 6 years ago now.
Yeah.
And I hadn't overly thought about it. And again, sort of in that weird way where you run into something you're not expecting on the street.
Yeah.
You're just like, oh, I need to remember this again now because this is apparently pertinent. So
the person you were friends with in school is dressed like a chicken.
Yeah. And you need to get to the bottom.
Like it's completely normal.
You need to get to the bottom of that. You need to extrapolate their previous works against the chicken and work out if this is coherent.
How do we get from here to here? But you're just on your way to work. You've only got so much time.
Any of the diehard Susanne Bier fans out there, please forgive me. I hope you're watching though. Like I said, if we could start like a cult or a community,
one of the two.
It'd be great. There's loads of little islands in Denmark. We could sort of we could set up there. I think we'd really make something of it.
And if she ran with Lars von Trier, she's definitely up for that kind of thing.
Definitely. So you got, like I said, you got little works. Then you move into things like Brothers. Brothers, I think, was like one of the first big ones.
Yeah.
And then you had Open Hearts, and Open Hearts is sort of like up until Open Hearts. Open Hearts, I think, was the last one. It was I think is the only numbered Dogma 95 movie she made. I've heard people I respect have called it pretentious before, but it's certainly interesting.
I think it's two sides of the same coin. It might be a bit pretentious, but it's also necessity is the mother of invention, and there's a great passion to it.
Dogma 95 was a series of restrictions that were put onto a number of films developed by mainly European and again mainly sort of Scandinavian, but headed by Lars von Trier, who obviously is these days not really remembered. I say remembered. Again, he's still active, lamentably.
Yes, he's regarded for
provocateur. Is that what we call him now?
I would say so. That or unperson. He's regarded for entirely the wrong thing or rather disregarded for entirely the wrong thing because he obviously said some stuff. I guess about 10 years ago now at the press trail for Melancholia rather. While at Cannes. And the thing is he said some stupid shit. Again, important to remember, in a second language, where he kind of said he kind of got Hitler or something. And I mean, he's such a teenage boy, obviously, that no one should have taken that on the nose. But I do understand that Cannes is actually a place where privileged people go to have a contest to see who can be the most outraged.
Yep.
So ever since then, he has been so venomously regarded in film media.
If that's your frame of reference, he often says now that his express aim is to get people to walk out of Cannes screenings. Yeah. And if you live in that world for 20, 30 years, you must not be. Your frame of reference must be fucked.
Yeah, absolutely.
I can only assume that because he considers that so important that he really hasn't got much else going on.
No.
And that he views sort of again, in the same way everyone else does, the same way they all do, seemingly views Cannes as sort of the nexus of culture.
Yeah. When it's not.
No, not in any.
It's the desert, the real. I mean, what's frustrating about that is, Lars von Trier shouldn't be disliked for having made just some lamentable comments about Hitler. He should be disliked because he's a shock jockey whose films are dumb and actually quite tedious to sit through, the ones that I've seen. I mean, because it was so passionately recommended by one of my friends over the course of several years, I watched both parts of Nymphomaniac last year, and it was a unique kind of shit in that it took me right after watching both movies to finally comprehend everything that had happened and be like, oh my god, that was garbage from start to finish. I was really giving it a chance moment to moment, and then I was like, what the fuck just happened?
No, that's entirely reasonable.
Ridiculous in every conceivable way.
And I think that's what makes this all the stranger, because again, Dogme 95 seems like a lifetime ago now. Yeah. I guess it is, and again, they don't make them anymore. It's sort of a mantra that's fallen into disuse. So Susanne Bier, so tracking her career. So I guess a brief version of it is the things like Brothers and Open Heart, which are both Danish films. They're pretty great Danish films. And then you've got, she tries to do, Western films every so often. So you've got, Things We Lost in the Fire, which was, Halle Berry. And then you've got Serena, which was...
Darren Aronofsky was going to direct
it. And then she came in. And again, just, a pretty poor run on Western films. And, again, it could be second language. It could be just that with the Aronofsky one, obviously, I imagine quite a lot of it was in place. It's probably not her fault.
Yeah.
But she's got a generally, strange track record. But they always seem consistent. Even Serena, even Things We Lost in the Fire, they're all about the same themes. The biggest deviation on it was The Night Manager, which was her most... and again, TV series, very sort of
Absolutely enormous.
British focused as well. Enormous, a huge success. Hugh Laurie, Tom Hiddleston. Really intense, nice. Josh hasn't seen it. I have. It's sort of like a quite...
John le Carré adaptation.
Yeah, exactly. It's really...
Approximate knowledge.
Yeah, just really nicely done. Kind of her, like it does. Like she gets her themes in there again.
So it seemed to have gone better when she was closer to Europe, in the sense that when she did something in the UK, it went slightly better than when she went into America.
Yes,
because the further into America her films seem to get, from what Aaron is telling me, the more they just seem to kind of lose their grip and seem like a copy of a copy of like her original intentions or what you recognise as her themes.
Yeah, well, it's just nothing that she needed to make. Like it could have been anyone. Like like no one remembers Things We Lost in the Fire.
There's no stamp on it.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay.
No, and the reason is because they could have been done. I guess like the idea is for her from a personal view. I guess she's like, I want to break America. There's money there. There's also probably greater access. You know, if she makes like some. It's the thing, like, you know, you tank it out in like films you don't want to do, and then you get to make films you do want to do on a big budget. I guess maybe that's what she was going for, and it never quite worked out.
Yeah.
Like, and then she appears on Bird Box, and again, I think if Bird Box hadn't been propelled as it was by the Meme Machine, it probably would have just been another like little chapter in that saga of sort of like films she made that didn't quite fit her and that didn't quite gel well. But yeah, as such, it's going to be remembered as one of the touchstones of like the transitionary period between 2018 and 19.
Yeah,
like it's on everyone's lips, and yeah, it's just so disparate from anything she's done. I mean, it's an action film for one.
The action in it is very poor.
She's
not an action director.
No,
she doesn't understand action.
But yeah, and that's if she was even involved with it. Like I said,
it's basically. Problem with a film like Bird Box is that what you need to do is deeply explore the logic of the constraints of the situation, and Bird Box actually rarely did that, to the point where with the floating down the river stuff, I was just constantly baffled that they weren't capsizing over and over and over again.
Like Hunger?
Yeah.
The toilet?
For a moment there, I thought that you were referring to the Steve McQueen movie Hunger, and then also presumably another movie that I didn't know about called The Toilet.
Oh no,
no, you mean yes,
as in
the
like
actual concept of being hungry, which
needing the toilet,
needing the toilet, absolutely.
I
guess they just pissed themselves the whole time.
I guess they did, like J.K. Rowling said, the wizards do. Do you see this?
No.
Oh, this is a big thing. J.K. Rowling recently announced that before Victorian plumbing, wizards just used to shit themselves or piss themselves and like clean it up afterwards with spells. Which, when I saw this, I thought it was like a clickhole article. I was like, she actually out clickholed because they've never done that.
She doesn't like competition, mate.
Yeah,
because the clickholes about J.K. Rowling are always the best ones. Well, it would have been so much more dignified for her to say this is a fictional universe and I did not think about that. But she's like, no, I did think about that. Like, you're not J.R.R. Tolkien.
No, there's someone pointed out that like it would be so unpleasant in your trousers as you were doing that. It's so undignified.
You'd still, if you were going to clean it up with a spell, you'd do it on the ground and then clean it up. You'd have a special closet, much like a toilet, where it's like, listen, you go in there, you do the shit, and then you clean it up off the floor.
Yeah, you would.
You fucking would, wouldn't you?
They just said they did it where they stand. And it's like, oh my God.
Well, that's okay. So that's wonderful. And now we'll go back to Susanne Bier.
Yeah,
no,
I think
great.
We should probably include that. I think that needs to be spread to the however many wins. 4 wins.
Oh, just the fucking idiot wind blowing every time she moves her teeth.
I can't even remember. Oh, that was it. Hunger. The necessities. So yeah, no real restriction, and the fact that none of that, like, we were making jokes that it looks like the actors were working like a 9-to-5 shift because nothing's at night. None of them look dishevelled.
No.
It's obviously part of one of the many memes. John Malkovich, despite being like a drunk, is perfectly healthy.
Looks fine.
Well fed. No one has torn clothes. Everyone's got a fresh supply of those.
Yep.
The room is very light considering everything's been blacked out.
Yeah,
everything's very nicely shot.
I tried to use like the yellowest like pirate paper so the light get through as well.
It's just
No, it is interesting because when we were reading what she said about the Dogma 95, now she got to move away from it, now she considers herself no longer bound by it, is that she said that she learnt lessons from those constrictions that will always stay with her, but then we were saying that Not so sure.
No, I don't.
Maybe unpracticed, that discipline has kind of left her, because I think if she was still in Dogma 95 mode, even though I get that it addresses sort of different things to this film, she just immediately would have been asking questions that either weren't asked on the set of this film or were asked, but the producers were like, there's nothing we can do about that.
The reason that this just doesn't reconcile with it at all, and the reason like all of her Anglosphere films don't really reconcile with it at all, I guess it's just because these are like factory made, aren't they now? Like there's so many different... She probably never even saw the people who added sound to this. Many of the action scenes probably. Maybe even, just like some really integral parts of it she probably just had no control over. Like I can't imagine, we like to think, or maybe not Hollywood, but people make us believe that the director is the all-consuming force, but it really isn't. Not in especially, and I think no more is it clear than in this film. And that someone who I know thinks in the way that they do, and who makes very certain films, like when put into this environment,
they are disempowered.
I guess can only really focus. I guess maybe you focus on the bits that you know you can do. So maybe she focuses quite a lot on the sort of the Sandra Bullock stuff. I don't know. She's quite sort of like an actor's director. Maybe she just really focused down on that. But even...
Although if she did, then she didn't do very well. So I'd really like to get into now the Dogma 95, because after we saw this, you were explaining to me about who Susanne Bier was, and then we got into the Lars von Trier connection, and you explained to me what the Dogma 95 was, and the set of rules, the manifesto by Lars and another fella, of which she was is the word... signatory.
Founder. I think they are it's a manifesto. I think it's poised as back in the day. It's quite. I mean, again, I will go ahead and say it's pretentious.
Well,
they sort of they make a declaration as to what they believe restrictions on a film should be.
But that's what we love about these European filmmakers, and even going back to like the early '60s with the French New Wave. Those guys took themselves so seriously; it was actually hilarious. But they did also make the 400 blows. Truffaut and Godard.
You have to believe in something to make something good, right? I applaud them, but what I'm saying is like, in the lens of 2019 now, I guess maybe it'll look a bit like dated and pretentious. I guess like when The Simpsons shows their parodies of the new wave, like I think something out of its time. But at the time, I think it got some really interesting films made that wouldn't have been made had there not been the stipulation.
So just imagine Lars is saying this in between, pledging ironic allegiance to the Nazis, but
possibly ironic. Again,
we never know. Shooting must be done on location. Props and sets must not be brought in. If a particular prop is necessary for the story, a location must be chosen where this prop is to be found.
No.
I
mean, shooting on location, I think it does that every time. I couldn't see any location where it wasn't. I felt like even the supermarket was an actual supermarket. I don't think they were sets.
The thing about, this thing that Lars put in here, if a particular prop is necessary for the story, a location must be chosen where this prop is to be found. Right. That's just stupid. It falls apart under all scrutiny. It's like, well, we actually need a gun. It's like, well, we're going to have to invade a police station.
I mean, I guess if there is a line, I think, where they say... No, there isn't a line. I think I commented, I'm mixing... I think Bird Box is quite a forgettable film when you get down to it. Is there a bit where they say this is America regarding guns?
No, I think that might have been. That was me, you, and Ali.
Oh, damn it! Yeah, you're right. That was. Oh god. So I mean, I guess it's an American home. I think it's more than reasonable there would be guns there. But like you said, that a very nitpicky way to construct a film.
I mean, it would be like if in the cult that I've been slowly trying to immerse you into, I was I wanted to make you loyal to me, so I was just like, okay, now Aaron, for 3 weeks. And this is central to the philosophy of Joshism. Central, I need you to wear watermelons on your hands. And I need you to do loads of manual labour for me.
And you take out 2 hitherto unseen watermelons?
Yeah, absolutely. Pull them right out my ass.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, it sounds good.
Yeah.
Though it doesn't really mean anything. I agree, the first one.
Number 2, the sound must never be produced apart from the images, or vice versa. Music must not be used unless it occurs where the scene is being shot. So...
I think this makes sense.
I think it does. Like the term, I believe, is diegetic sound. Is that correct? Yeah. So I like movies that only use that. It could be a gimmick, but it's also so brave to do it that I think people don't embark upon it unless they're very sure.
Yep.
Yeah.
When they're playing around with it, it starts off as layered and then we'll go into the scene, and I think if you do that very well, it can be quite impressive. I always like to note when that's done. I think again, like, not done in this film at all, but again, why would it be? Because there was almost definitely a department doing the sound who probably received
Spooky monster sound.
received the film in a box and just opened it up, put it into their computer, and then put sound over it.
They haven't seen the outside world for a long time.
Exactly, and
They've been hostage by Netflix. They
and
have
again-
their families.
And again, that's why I think this is, because this is obviously done minimalist European independent cinema,
Yeah.
and I think this is where it's really funny. This is probably almost an unfair test, but I think it does highlight something. There is no possible universe where Bird Box could be made to these standards.
Yeah.
Like, again, thanks to Lars von Trier, no one's going to try and hijack and make Dogme
That's correct.
52 or whatever number they got up to.
I like it as a principle because sometimes the overbearance of these fucking studio scores in films like upsets me so much that their mere suspension in a certain scene pulls me into what's happening.
Very effective.
Like nothing else ever could do. Like you've just injected me with drugs. It's just the fact that, you know, how I can't hear Howard Shore or Hans Zimmer or Carter Burwell in the background cashing a paycheck. That sound stops and you just hear distantly like, oh, where is it? Where's all my money gone? And then you just finally focus on the image. I like that.
Yeah, it really brings it into a different perspective. It sort of like forces you into another frame of mind because you're not being told what to thought and you're like, oh shit. It's really good. People should do it more often. The lack of something can create something as much as a bomb can.
Oh, Jesus Christ. That was a joke like a year after Inception came out, and now it's almost 11 years after that, and it's still a thing. How wonderful. So the next one is, camera must be handheld. Any movement or immobility attainable in the hand is permitted. Okay, so
again, he's trying to sound smart here.
Yeah.
Perhaps doesn't translate well from the Danish I presume it was written in.
Yeah.
But
first sentence is sufficient, basically.
Yeah, exactly.
The camera has to be handheld.
Yeah, and he's basically saying that if you can keep it immobile with your hand, then that's great.
Yeah.
Which, thanks, Lars.
Yeah,
I'm glad.
unlike you, Lars, we weren't shit-faced last night and every night. Thinking back to 73.
He's trying to. He's actually really envious that when he does his like Hitler rants, he can't get the hand camera like steady. So he doesn't want anyone else to either.
Oh man, it was so blurry they couldn't even see the uniform I'd mocked up for myself.
I don't think any scene in this film was shot on anything other than like a crane.
I didn't really find any of the cinematography compelling, except for, I will say, in some of the river scenes, I don't know what river they used, but it was ominous and grey and crashing. So I will say that those images, if any images alone, stick with me from this film.
Even in the forest chase, which was a time for some great cinematography, it
Yeah.
doesn't actually ever manifest itself.
Could have been GCSE media studies students.
The best bit I saw, and even then it wasn't that great, was at one point it allowed us a wide angle of the forest where there was like 3 gusts of wind.
Yeah.
That was about as good as it got, and that wasn't that good. That's just like the best of a really bland sequence.
No, I can't think of a single instance where I thought that the camera work actually added to what we were seeing.
I mean, it was as soulless as the dialogue, but harder to recognise as such.
This next one is, the film must be in colour. Special lighting is not acceptable. If there is too little light for exposure, the scene must be cut, or a single lamp to be attached to the camera.
Almost definitely industrial-sized lights
Yeah.
everywhere.
Floodlights
Yeah.
outside the house in every single scene.
Now,
It's not bright enough.
I feel like they applied some sort of like grey filter over the camera at several points during the scene.
The colour correction.
Yeah, I think bits in the hospital where I thought it was really like outside was really strangely lit.
Yeah.
But like I think it maybe again I haven't studied it enough to be able to comment on it. I just remember your brain's like, oh, that doesn't look right.
Yeah.
And there are a couple of moments like that. The first 20 minutes of the film and the river scene have all the interesting shots because the rest of it's just a house.
The opportunity, the completely wasted opportunity of this film was that for a movie where the central thing they need to do to protect themselves is to cover up the windows. Now there is a scene.
It's not dark enough.
Yeah, exactly. There is a scene where Cutler Beckett rips down the paper, and it should be like, oh my god, but
Flooded with
because
light.
they've put the paper in such a way that basically all light can already get through, it's a massive waste of what should be one of the most like tragic beats of the film. Because up until that point, they
should be like mole people.
The
They should
deprivation
be.
of the senses is what this is supposed to be about, but at all times everything is completely fine.
Yep, you could make
Everything's
it
totally visible.
You could make it such a thematic thing about them having, because again, like you could tie it into the rope. That's why they're really good at getting around by rope, because they've had to lead themselves around this like dark house. The electricity could be off, so it couldn't be fucking light all the time, and then they'd have to black out the windows. That would make it really claustrophobic.
So I'm trying to think of examples here. They're in one location for so long and they're told they have to be, but then finally at the end they escape it. And the one that's coming to mind 10 Cloverfield Lane.
Yep.
Like when she actually gets out of the house, it's just like,
we can leave.
oh my fucking god.
Yeah. I think A Quiet Place does it, not to such an extent, I know you haven't seen it, but it does do it a bit, where there's like this network of, I think it's sand or flour, it must be sand, that you can walk on, and they walk on it without fear. They walk on it without shoes anyway, just to make sure it doesn't make a sound.
Yeah.
And there's a bit where they like leave the set perimeter of which you can go on. It's quite a big moment. And there's a bit where they leave the quiet place, in particular. And again, that's quite big because it represents you leaving the safety of the house. But in this, I never felt like the house was a shelter, but it was almost too good a shelter because it had everything.
It was supposed to be a prison. And like, it would be a really easy check for suspense to cash, where finally windows are ripped open, finally they have to leave. But
well, you could have like the thing where like you set it up earlier, like Machine Gun Killer's like, I want some fucking sun. He's like, you can't get some sun. He's like, and then like, you slam it shut again. John Malkovich is like, you're not getting me killed as well, you damn kid.
That's right.
And then then you have again, if you want to be cheap, you have like a musical score where it's like Cutler Beckett's reaching for it, his hand's shaking maybe, and he grabs it and he pulls it back, and like the score goes like that, and it's flooded with light. Yeah, it's a beautiful scene in my mind.
Great for that is as soon as he rips open the window, it's the Pirates of the Caribbean theme.
Jack Sparrow crashes through.
I was going to say, they're all like swinging on ropes.
Yeah. That's good. No, perfect.
And there's just an enormous pirate ship outside. It's like, we've come to make your movie better. This is going nowhere.
I would love it. Pirates of the Caribbean 6, The Bird Box.
Fantastic. So moving on.
Sorry.
No, it's fine. Optical work and filters are forbidden, which links into the last one. I don't think we have to...
Yeah, again, like not even...
tread that one on.
Yep.
So I love this one. The film must not contain superficial action, murders, weapons, etc. must not occur.
So I've talked with people about this one before because it's not. I guess it's probably the second most controversial on the list, and obviously this one I think is broadly interpreted as you can have those things, they just can't be superficial. Obviously, superficial is an incredibly subjective word by its very nature.
I do really like this rule because there are many times when I'm going to see a movie. Like, say with you, as it basically always is now, lover, where basically I will actually be enjoying what I'm watching, but because it's a movie of a certain budget, the producers are clearly just like, right, we have to have an action scene here. And then I sit through that action scene, and it's not making me learn anything about the characters, and it's not escalating any of the drama, and I endure it, and it's so fucking irritating.
I tell you what, I agree entirely. Like, so often, I think people have really lost the art of the action scene. And I tell you what film, I know this isn't an original point, but what film I think could really benefit from this is like...
Other than Blade 2.
Other than Blade 2, which obviously seamlessly blends action and narrative in a way that only really Herman Melville had done up until that point. For all you Moby Dick fans out there.
Absolutely.
No, the film that does it is Bun Suspense, Mad Max Fury Road, in my opinion. And I think I don't know. I would like to watch this with Lars von Trier. Actually, I wouldn't because he might be a Nazi.
Yeah, that's true.
But I'd like to watch it either side of a plate glass window with Lars von Trier.
How about I bring him in and he'll be in like the Hannibal Lecter
thing.
I'll
exactly.
wheel him in. We'll be like, we're not fans, but we're interested in you, like a case study.
Yeah. And he does that, and he's like, and he, I'm pretty apprehensive. And we watch Mad Max together, and I'd like to see if he deems
hide your yarmulke, and your Torah, stuff like that.
Exactly, and then he'll
was
be
that? Nothing.
He can never know, and basically we're gonna watch Mad Max, and I would like to see if he deems any of that to be superficial. I think he would because he's a dick, but I like to think if he was being honest, like. I can think of very few action scenes in that were superficial. I think nearly every one of them advances the plot.
I agree.
I think they're done really well, and I think you communicate so much character in each of those scenes that even though there's loads of action in that film, I would say that's not superficial. No. And that's like my version of the interpretation of that rule. I know other people say basically like any murder that's not like plot critical is, but I disagree.
That's fair enough. But I like it, and I do think that's a good point about Mad Max. I think that not that this is the only way that drama ever occurs or escalates, but he made the main driving force of any drama in the film being in the context of a scene of conflict. Yeah. That was great.
It was really good, and it really, really worked, and more people should do it. But equally, even Aquaman, which I've been defending, doesn't do that. There's conflict pointlessly for the sake of conflict.
Yeah.
Like, quite a lot. And again, that's just sort of like a bad habit that and again, like you said, like, you know, second unit's got to do something, right?
Yeah,
and
yeah.
you got to put something in the trailer.
Well,
so
we've hired them because they have a really good union. So the next one is temporal and geographical alienation are forbidden. That is to say that the film takes place here and now.
I like that this one was so obtuse that they had to put a brackets explaining what it actually meant.
Once again, yeah.
Which is so
Lars.
Yeah.
Lars.
So I mean, it does happen here and now. I think as much as it happens in a vague 21st century.
Yeah.
I think it's just supposed to be recognisably the present day.
I think this is a stupid rule that shows that Lars is kind of a stupid person, because there are stories that can only be told in the past, and I'm not actually talking about really obvious big hits. Let's say
history.
Exactly. Like I'm not even saying that. I'm not saying like World War II or something that involves like the last days of Hitler. What I'm talking about are that there were periods that were so ideologically distinct from how they are now that people behaved in a certain way that they only behaved then. So it's not even about, say, the French Revolution as much as it is the feelings and convictions of the time. You can't tell that story now.
The conditions that made it possible.
Exactly.
I mean, because
the point of the individual, and the individual is the star of your story. So that's.
No, I agree.
He's a moron.
I mean, it is ridiculous. The thing is, well, I guess the thing is, he wasn't saying all films should be like this. I guess he was saying like you will make great films if you do this, which is again not a right point. He was saying if you want to make what he deems to be like a great film.
What would have been more honest is if this rule took the form of a reminder that you're probably not going to have enough money to make a period piece, but instead he tried to dress it up as a bit more philosophical than that.
Well, yeah, exactly. I guess if you're considering making one of these at the time, you probably aren't getting sort of like the Cloud Atlas budget to set it over 7 or 6 different
That's right.
the time periods.
How many time periods can we do? How many time periods can't we do?
It's like, how much money are they willing to pay the Wachowskis now?
For some reason, still loads. So the next few are very
Next.
funny. Genre movies are not acceptable. Massive break. It's got. I mean, all of these movies were surely the same. Like,
I mean, they're all a
European
genre.
family genre.
Yeah.
Family drama rather, where people just look longingly at each other, and you hear like the sound of a teaspoon knocking against a mug. Did it 3 times, like Peter's thrice denial.
I mean, you perfectly captured the disdain I sometimes feel towards them, so that's nice.
Yeah.
But yeah, exactly. I mean, a genre. He means obviously this in terms of like Wild West, but just it's poorly worded because the term genre is just a useful classification for a number of items.
Yeah.
But I get it. I guess what he didn't want to do is to someone to try to make a Dogma 95 film and have it be a cowboy film.
Yeah.
I guess that would have annoyed him, so he said no.
I mean, I would like to say that Lars von Trier's movies are now, I would say, in a genre of their own. By his own manifesto, he's not allowed to make films anymore. Sorry, Lars.
I mean, that's the thing. I bet he doesn't adhere to all of this anymore, actually. No. I'd like to go... I'm not going to watch them all, but...
Although, I will say that when you first showed me this, I was thinking back on Nymphomaniac and the things I thought was weird about it, and I do think there is actually quite a lot of natural light used in it.
Hey, there you
go. And the loads of handheld... Loads. So I think that he's probably stuck to this more than he hasn't stuck to it.
Well, I'm not going to watch The House That Jack Built, but I'd like to think that by this point, and especially with the not only the prohibitions of the the cinema scene as it is currently, but also like his own financial situation or his own situation in general, I imagine he's probably had to.
Yeah.
Though again, I guess many of these are designed to be minimalist, so maybe it wouldn't affect it so much. But hell, maybe it's worth watching just to find out. I'd like to know.
The final two is just the file format must be Academy 35mm,
which is such a. Yeah. It's like Quentin Tarantino, where he says that he was like, I needed to shoot The Hateful Eight in 70 was it 70mm?
Yeah.
The thing that hadn't been used since Gordon of Khartoum, and for good reason.
Yeah. No one noticed.
But
I understand the fascination with 50mm and wanting to keep it 50mm, but
some of it looked good. To be fair, some of the Hateful Eight you can tell it's shot more so just the only camera that can run 70 rather than the actual quality of the film.
I was just really excited to have that toy.
But then again, the thing is, they say that if they had done the 70mm road tour in the UK, I'd have gone to see it. So maybe he's he's clearly playing me right in some way. What's the last one? Round us off.
The director must not be credited.
I like this one. Yep. I think this is one of the things that makes Dogma 95 admirable. I like that they've all got numbers. I like that you have to submit it. I like that it was accepted. I think Open Hearts is Number 28, I want to say.
Open Hearts is
Susan Bier's contribution, the one with Mads Mikkelsen in it.
Yeah.
My beloved, my husbando.
The man.
The man himself. But yeah, it was a nice idea. It's very of its time, as I guess most things are by default.
Yeah.
And there are very few things that are timeless.
I know what you mean. Yeah. I mean, it's a 90s thing.
Yeah,
so
exactly. It was done by a group of people who were sort of rejecting the blockbuster sort of movement at the time. I mean, obviously, I think do people always say that Jaws was the beginning of Jaws and Star Wars, sort of like Steven Spielberg, George Lucas.
Yeah.
They were rejecting that, and they were focusing very inwardly on sort of it's like German directors, Danish directors, Swedish directors. I think it's admirable. I don't. I'm never going to mock them. Well, no more than I already have.
Yeah.
I'm never going to say that they shouldn't, or they were idiots, or that they were being overly pretentious. Like you said, they were committing to something. Yeah. They committed to an aesthetic. They committed to a style, and they did it. And now they make Bird Box.
I was going to say,
and
now they're all established.
I was going to say, they're the hippies. They're in the field. And now they're not. Now they're going into the 9-to-5 office routine.
That's right. Yeah, they're in the corporations. They've got the pensions and.
No,
they're shaming younger people.
They want to be credited.
Too busy counting money with those hands. Yeah, they definitely want to be credited.
And so I think it's just cemented to me that that was kind of done. And I know obviously it's been done for like over a decade now.
No, absolutely.
Lars is disgraced. Many of them don't do it anymore, and the few of them that do are either so indie that I don't keep up with them anymore, or they're well established, and that's kind of sad.
Yeah. I basically think that my final comment on this is that. Having read this, having learnt from you where Susanne Bier came from, and more about this film, I just want this film to be her golden ticket to make whatever it is that she wants to make now.
I hope she signed a contract based on viewership, and the Netflix have to pay her a giant bag of money.
Yeah, no. I hope she gets enormous royalties. I'd be worried if she doesn't, because the problem is this is not really. It doesn't seem to me to be like a Susanne Bier film, so it's not like. No one else is going to remember her name after this. What people see is Netflix and Sandra Bullock. You're the only person running around with a sandwich board on your chest saying, this was a fucking important person.
Yeah, that's the precept, is that this is not her film. Yeah, and...
I just hope that the next one she gets to make is her film.
Yeah, same. And that it's not Bird Box 2, The Adventures of Machine Gun Kelly, Machine Gun Kelly's Last Stand, Machine Gun Kelly and... The Sundance Kid. The only other thing, actually, I did cross my mind is that we talked about the monsters and not knowing what the monsters look like. I don't know if you saw, but there's a clickbait article doing the rounds.
They're just scary babies.
They're just little scary babies.
Susanne Bier said the exact right thing in response to that. She said that she didn't want them in there because the monster should be in the eye of the beholder. And I would say that is the only thing that was right.
And she's right. And as you probably saw, that baby was made... in a studio, nowhere near any other part of the production, because it was all done by little modules of specialists. And I think that's a nice closing point. Is that it's just one
bullet we dodged there.
Yeah,
yep,
definitely, and we didn't have to pay for it, so we managed to get two videos out of something that we didn't need to go to the cinema to see.
Fantastic,
because that's how the economy works now.
We won again. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Thanks for listening. Thanks for Alex telling us that you should like and subscribe.
That's correct.
We agree.
Yeah, we do agree, although tentatively. We just appreciate that you listen.
Yeah, any if you've got this far, then you're who we do this for.
Thank you very much.